The scrapyard. Get ready to rock. Object number 42. Lightning in a bottle. Rarity. 7 out of 10. Utility. 8 out of 10. Usage and demand. 4 out of 10. Hazard level. 8 out of 10. Object 42, otherwise known as lightning in a bottle, is, as the name implies, an electrical charge that is stored in bottles or other containers. It can be found across the majority of levels in the Backrooms, albeit rarely. Description: Bottled lightning is an electric charge of an estimated 1 billion joules, which can be found in several levels of the Backrooms, stored in glass containers such as flasks, wine bottles, and many others. Despite the fact that these containers are usually made of glass, they can contain the lightning without the container shattering into pieces. The reason as to why this occurs is as of yet unknown. One can easily identify instances of Object 42 by their appearance. The lightning moves around the container at very high speeds, and also emits an extremely bright light. It is recommended to touch these objects only when wearing sufficient hand protection, as to prevent heat-related injuries. Footnote: the containers have been known to reach extreme heats of up to 73 degrees Celsius. End footnote. The lightning is normally contained by a cork stopper at the top of the container, but other methods of containment have been observed. Opening the container in any way will release the electricity inside. When released, the lightning searches for the closest conductor. Opening the bottle by removing the stopper yourself is highly discouraged, since the first thing the lightning will arc to will almost invariably be the person who opened it, as they are the nearest conductor. The bottles themselves are extremely fragile, despite holding all of that energy inside of them. When one is carrying Object 42, they should be extremely wary of the way in which they handle it to prevent any accidents. The danger posed by the fragility of the bottles has not deterred several people throughout the Backrooms from using them, however, as Object 42 has seen widespread use as both a source of energy and as a weapon. There are 3 different variations of Object 42, 2 of which can be found naturally, and 1 of which is artificially manufactured. Blue lightning. The most commonly occurring variation. Blue lightning variants glow a vivid shade of blue and emit the brightest lights out of all of the variants. When released, they act just like electricity would, seeking the fastest path to the nearest conductor. Shaking the container will make it temporarily glow with a bright blue light. When applied to humans, the charge is most often fatal, but in some cases it is survivable. Blue lightning variants conduct through the best conductor in the room. Because of this, they may be unpredictable when released, so caution is advised when planning to use them in any way. Artificial lightning. An artificially manufactured imitator of blue lightning. Artificial variations were first manufactured by Frederick Rustpunk Kaiser after experimenting with several different alternatives to blue lightning energy harvesting in order to create a safer version of bottled lightning. The result was the artificial lightning variation, which is significantly less bright, powerful, and hot compared to the previously mentioned counterpart. Because of this, it has seen widespread use as an energy source due to its relative safety, but less use as a weapon due to its reduced power. Artificial lightning variations tend to prefer conduction through metallic objects rather than living creatures. Because of this, one can open a bottle of artificial lightning without getting hurt as long as there is a metal conductor nearby. Black lightning. The most dangerous version of bottled lightning. Black lightning variations are thankfully not as common as their blue lightning counterparts. Pitch black in color, yet still emitting a faint glow, they are estimated to be 10 times more powerful than the blue lightning variations. These changes have been known to behave anomalously, prioritizing conduction through living creatures when released from their containers, and have been reported to randomly explode on some occasions, killing any living creatures that may be nearby. As of now, Black lightning cannot be effectively and safely harvested as an energy source due to how dangerous and unstable it is. Should wanderers encounter it, they are advised to stay clear and avoid it due to its unpredictable nature. Test logs. The following tests were conducted by Frederick Kaiser between the dates of 24/5/2018 and 8/3/2019, when first experimenting with the harvesting of Object 42 and the creation of artificial lightning. Test number 1 through 3. Date 24/5/2018. Objects used: Object 42, Blue Lightning Variation. Aim: to experiment with Object 42's conductivity. Test setup: the lightning was released by an automated mechanical hand into a room where one rod of copper wire was connected to a watt meter. Results: the lightning was released and immediately went for the wire in each test. The copper wire grew hot and glowed blue temporarily as the electrical current passed through it. But when the current reached the watt meter, it blew up each time. Conclusion: if it's powerful enough to break a watt meter, I'm pretty sure we're dealing with some serious shit. Test number 4. Date 17/6/2018. Objects used: Object 42, Blue Lightning Variation. Aim: to further experiment with Object 42's conductivity. Test setup: the lightning was released by an automated mechanical hand into an empty room with nothing that could constitute as a conductor inside of it. Results: the lightning immediately flowed to the mechanical hand, causing it to sizzle and break down. Conclusion: I may have, forgotten the fact that the hand is also made of metal. This also kinda raises the question, how come it went for the copper wire in the previous tests and not the arm? Test number 5. Date 23/6/2018. Objects used: Object 42, Blue Lightning Variation. Aim: to further experiment with Object 42's conductivity. Test setup: the bottle was placed sideways in the middle of an empty room. A brick was waxed to the ceiling and was left there until the wax melted. Results: when the wax melted, the brick fell onto the bottle, smashing it to pieces and releasing the lightning with nothing to conduct through. The lightning hit one of the walls instead, leaving a scorch mark and causing ozone to be created. Conclusion: so when it has nothing to conduct through, it's just regular lightning. Neat. Test number 6 to 8. Date 10/7/2018. Objects used: Object 42, Blue Lightning Variation. Aim: to test the conduction preferences of Object 42. Test setup: in the 3 tests, Object 42 was placed in a room with 2 rods of metal, one made of aluminum and one made of copper. In the first test, the distance between the rod of copper from the bottle was the same as the distance of the aluminum rod, but in the second and third tests, the bottle was placed closer to the aluminum and farther away from the copper. Results: in all tests, the lightning always conducts through the copper. Conclusion: that explains the results in the previous tests. Test number 9. Date 21/7/2018. Objects used: Object 42, Blue Lightning Variation. Aim: to attempt the harvesting of Object 42 as an energy source. Test setup: the lightning was released by an automated mechanical hand into a room where one rod of copper wire was attached to a specialized battery, theoretically capable of holding the energy exerted by the lightning. Results: the battery was blown up. Conclusion: oh fuck, right when I thought I'd struck gold. Test number 14. Date 28/9/2018. Objects used: Object 42, Black Lightning Variation. Aim: to test the properties of a new variant of Object 42, which was recently reported throughout the Backrooms. Test setup. The same setup as Test 1 was used. Results. Before the automated hand could open the bottle, it burst open, burning the copper and causing the watt meter and arm to explode. Conclusion. Whoa, now that's a force to be reckoned with. Test number 22. Date 10/10/2018. Objects used. Object 42. Black lightning variation. Aim. To test the properties of a new variant of Object 42 which was recently reported throughout the Backrooms. Test setup. The same setup as Test 1 was used, but with a silver rod instead of a copper one. Results. Same results as Test 14. Conclusion. So even the most durable conductor can't handle the charge from these things. What in the ever-living fuck is up with them? Side note as well, when experimenting with black light variants, resource management should be a priority, as from what I've seen now, they're even rarer than blue light variants, which are already rare in themselves. Test number 25. Date 2/11/2018. Objects used. Non-applicable. Aim. To attempt to artificially recreate an instance of Object 42. Test setup. A lightning rod was set up in level 817 during a thunderstorm, and the lightning collected was transferred to a battery. Results. The energy was collected successfully in the battery. Conclusion. I mean, we got the energy, but this wasn't what I wanted. I want to collect it just like the other bottles. Test number 26. Date 27/11/2018. Objects used. Non-applicable. Aim. To attempt to artificially recreate an instance of Object 42. Test setup. Same as the previous test, but the lightning rod was wired to a glass flask instead of a battery, similar to those found in the naturally occurring bottles. A copper rod connected to a battery was in the room as a precaution. Results. The bottle was shattered, and the lightning went into the copper rod the same way it had in previous tests. Conclusion. Maybe I need to do it in specialized bottles? The ones that occur naturally don't seem to be any different than normal glass. Test number 27. Date 15/12/2018. Objects used. Non-applicable. Aim. To attempt to artificially recreate an instance of Object 42. Test setup. Same as the previous test, but the lightning rod was wired to a reinforced glass flask. A copper rod connected to a battery was in the room as a precaution. Results. Same as the previous test. Conclusion. I don't get it. What's so special about those goddamn bottles in the first place? Maybe using them could be the solution? Test number 28. Date 28/12/2018. Objects used. Non-applicable. Aim. To attempt to artificially recreate an instance of Object 42. Test setup. Same as the previous test, but the lightning rod was wired to a discarded bottle of naturally occurring lightning. Results. The lightning was contained successfully, producing what is now known as the artificial variant. Conclusion. I'm amazed that it worked, but I'm disappointed at my common sense. Nevertheless, Eureka! Test number 29. Date 4/1/2019. Objects used. Object 42. Artificial lightning variation. Aim. To experiment with Object 42's conductivity. Test setup. Identical to tests 1 through 3. Results. The lightning was released and immediately went for the wire. Power was gauged at 100,000 joules. Conclusion. It's definitely not as strong as the blue lightning variation, but it's still something. Test number 30. Date 15/1/2019. Objects used. Object 42. Artificial variation. Aim. To further experiment with Object 42's conductivity. Test setup. Identical to Test 5. Results. When the wax melted, the brick fell onto the bottle, smashing it to pieces and releasing the lightning, With nothing to conduct through, the lightning hit one of the walls instead, leaving a scorch mark. No ozone was created. Conclusion. Mostly similar to Experiment 5. Nothing's changed here. Test number 31 through 33. Date 6/2/2019. Objects used. Object 42, artificial variation. Aim, to test the conduction preferences of Object 42. Test setup, identical to tests 6 through 8. Results. In all tests, the lightning always conducted through the copper. Conclusion. Nothing different here either. Test number 34. Objects used. Object 42, artificial lightning variation. Aim, to attempt the harvesting of Object 42 as an energy source. Test setup, identical to Test 9. Results. The energy was stored in its entirety successfully. Conclusion. Success! This is going to save me so many hours of trying to barter for batteries. Test number 42. Date 8/3/2019. Objects used. Object 42, black lightning variation. Aim. The test was conducted accidentally after someone had brought an instance of the black lightning variation into the room without knowing of its unstable properties. Test setup. Non-applicable. Results. The energy burst open, releasing a burst of deadly electricity into the room. However, instead of killing the people inside the room, it immediately went towards a broken clock, which was in the same room at the time of the incident. The clock was fixed instantly, and it seemed to operate much more accurately than before. Conclusion. What the hell was that?